Yeah.
Wow.
Man, like, okay, here's my eternal issue, right? Like with this stuff is that it's like I feel like when we go to record the intros to these podcasts, everything I think is funny to say, I listen back to and go, "Oh my god, that can't be the intro." Like society isn't ready to hear that, you know? So then it's like we kind of just have to like trip along for like 20 minutes until, you know, I bleeped out like the first part of the Avengers episode too, because it's like I listened back to it and I was like, "That's very funny," but the world's not ready to hear what I said there, so I just added a nice bleep.
It's funny because that presupposes that society is lagging far behind you.
I would argue they are, yeah.
Yeah, that somehow you've pushed yourself forward.
Right,
so far
I've
ahead.
ascended.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that this podcast is kind of categorical proof that society is lagging behind my opinions, considering that all these movies make like $14 billion, and that's wrong. That they shouldn't, you know.
No, I mean that's a good point.
I mean, at what point are you going to realize that you're the outside one here, and that maybe the rest of society is ahead of you?
I mean, no, like pioneers tend to be loners by nature. So
wow, you know, thank you so much, John.
Yeah, forever. Yeah, because like once you push ahead, then you realize there's that disparity between you and the rest of the people, and then you kind of wait for them to catch up. But the entire time, you're not going to stay stagnant. You just keep moving forward on your own.
You're continuing to move forward. So it's like, so when you start further ahead, then as society's slowly catching up to you, I'm already way the fuck out here. By the time you get to where I was, all right, that was me 15 years ago, dude. You're just now coming to realize truths that I knew 2 decades ago? That's pretty cringe, dude. Okay, well, I'm already past that.
When archaeologists find a iPhone 13 deep in the ground and they pull it out and listen to Cape shit 100 years from now on this broken iPhone, and they go, "Wow, this guy Christian, he was really ahead of the times. Can't believe he was so cast out in society."
No. What they're going to do is they're going to pull that iPhone out, right? And then they're going to hear it, and then they're going to say, "Wow, this is everything that we know to be true about the world in this current moment. I guess he was 100 years ahead of his time."
And then they're going to make a movie about you, and it's going to make $1.5 billion.
It's going to make $1.5 billion. And then my ghost is going to haunt the director and make his daughter's head spin around and puke.
Yeah, well, that was an interesting way to end that story, but I think we'll have to take it this time.
It's The Exorcist, dude. Okay. Have you never seen The Exorcist? Dude, this podcast is Jesus Christ. Hey, what's up? I'm Christian.
I'm The Exorcist.
And I'm here too. My name's John.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, hey.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Have you really never seen The Exorcist, dude?
I've seen The Exorcist. I didn't know I was supposed to respond. Hold on.
Yeah.
Wait. Okay. I didn't know I was supposed to respond at the end of that and go, "Hey, Christian, great Exorcist reference."
Right.
That was really great because, you know, nobody in the history of media has ever made the reference to a spinning head girl puking that was being possessed. No one's ever done that. So I should have said, you know, wow, very original reference to the unheard of movie Exorcist that nobody has watched.
Dan? I accept the apology. That is what you should have said. I'm glad that we can both see eye to eye on this. And you know, I think it's podcast time. What's going on, everyone? My name's Christian. This is, of course, a podcast called Cape Shit. Here we get into all the capers that you know and love. This is, of course, in this podcast, we get into our political opinions. We talk a little cancel culture. We give you the news that the mainstream, they're too afraid to give. That's a joke. This is about none of that. This is superheroes. You should know that if you've been listening up to this point. And as I said at the beginning of our last episode, if you've been listening up to this point, subscribe to this podcast. Come on. It's pathetic. This is my pathetic beg that I'm now doing at the beginning of these. Truly, my goal is to get enough listeners so that I can monetize this and throw some ads in the middle and completely check out, which I have not yet been able to do. And frankly, that feels a little unfair to me. So, you know, get us there. If that's not happening, just know that's your fault. I don't think that's my fault at all.
Yeah. And now a word from our sponsor.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Squarespace.
Hey, do you like websites, you fucking idiot? Anyway,
have you ever been to a website?
Well,
let me tell you.
Again?
Yeah, you moron. What the hell is wrong with you? No, of course, this is Cape Shit. Today in Cape Shit, we started. That's right. Do you have your air horn ready, Dan?
I do, actually.
Okay, all right. We started phase 2. Yeah, woo!
Nice,
all right, there it is. Yep, phase 2, Iron Man 3, which is, frankly, that's a little confused. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I follow. It's phase 2, but it's Iron Man 3.
Yeah, well, you see, number 3 comes after the number 2.
Right. So surely this should be the introduction to phase 3.
Well,
one would assume.
Numbers are difficult for you, and I get that. And, I'm going to write a letter directly to Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
And let him know that in the future, if they're going to put a number in the title of a movie, it better match that phase.
Right. Thank you so much. And I think to sort of harken back to our previous conversation, in 100 years from now, that is how it will work. So just, stay tuned.
I bet it is. To add more confusion to this for you, and I'm so sorry to do this to you.
It's okay. I forgive you.
I'm going to give you a little background because this was released on May, wait for it, 3rd.
What?
2013. So 2 more 3s.
That's
associated with this movie.
Okay. No,
in phase 2.
Damn, I think I'm gonna need a second. Actually, that's
All right. Well, take it while I continue the rest of the background.
Okay.
This was produced by Marvel Studios, distributed by Disney. Paramount is still getting money. I think this is their last one where they get to put their logo at the start of the film while not having done anything. They've distributed rights, or they've handed over rights to Disney, but they get to get some money off the top as part of that distribution changeover deal. This one was not directed by Jon Favreau like Iron Man 1 and 2, and was directed by the one and only Shane Black.
Oh my God, Shane Black.
Wow.
I know. And then written by Shane Black and Drew Pearce, which obviously, again, just what a writing comedy duo. They were really focused this time on focusing on the story being character centric, which Favreau decided that he wanted to give up that director title for this one. Returning RDJ, Gwyneth Paltrow, Don Cheadle, Jon Favreau, and then our first appearance of the fake Mandarin.
What?
Ben Kingsley, which he also did a short called All Hail the King. And then, I don't know, maybe he'll show up in the future. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, I don't know. That kind of sounds like a spoiler, dude.
I don't know. I'm just saying maybe he will, maybe he won't. Ben Kingsley, big actor, taking on this kind of role. We'll see.
Is he? What else is Ben Kingsley in?
Just so many things.
Just a lot of things that I've heard good things about. I couldn't tell you what they are right now because they're just so
He's
many.
also knighted, by the way. He is
Sir Ben Kingsley. That's true.
Wait, which one is Ben Kingsley? Is he like the other billionaire, or is he like the fake Mandarin?
The actor.
He's the fake
Got
Mandarin.
it. Okay,
yes.
The actor playing the actor.
I can't believe you don't know Sir Ben Kingsley.
Pop culture just goes over my head too
if you think
too often.
Knighted. If you think being knighted is pop culture, then I guess okay.
Yeah.
$1.2 billion made in this, and at the time was the 16th film ever to gross over $1 billion, and was based on a comic book 6-series arc called Extremis. Or Extremis.
Extremis.
Not Extremis.
He says it in the movie, boy.
Come on, dude. You're really
all right.
You're really fucking up this intro.
Yeah, you had one
get
job.
it together, please.
My whole thing was just to talk for a while so you could get over the whole phase 2 Iron Man 3 kind of thing. So I hope you're feeling better.
I've gotten over it. I am feeling much better. Thank you.
Good. Well, then I guess that means we can actually get into the movie.
Yeah.
Right?
What happens?
Right up at the start with some suits getting destroyed, and we get a little backtrack from Tony Stark himself, giving us some background on what he feels like his journey is through the course of being Iron Man so far.
A famous man once said, "We create our own demons, and the demons that we create are but you know what? Record scratch. You might be wondering how I got to this point.
Let's go back to 1999 Switzerland.
Yeah,
where we will see just one sweet mullet on Happy. That's how you really always time jump, right? You change the hair.
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr., he's got the different facial hair, and we got Happy with the mullet. And it really tells you how you've time traveled, you know?
Yeah, I also really like how in the Switzerland part, like, so this weirdo, this creep comes up to Tony and is like, "Hey, Tony, I have technology that might be interesting to you." And then Tony's like, yeah, you know what? I'm too busy. What's the line? He's talking to a botanist, a woman who is a scientist, and she says, "Where are we going?" To which Tony replies, "To town on each other," which is that's a fun line.
There are lots of fun lines in this movie.
Right. So, you know, and so as they're going up the elevator, this creep sort of accosts Tony and is like, "Hey, Tony, I have technology for you." And he's like, "Yeah, you know what, bud? Why don't you go ahead and meet me on the roof? I'll see you there in 20. Which, unbeknownst to him, butterfly effect kicks off an entire thing. But a thing that I liked about this is that this is a character that you're going to see again later, but they just made him gross looking in this part. And it's fun to me because he sort of has to be gross looking for this to like make sense. It's just like a little touch, you know? Because if some like well-groomed individual came up to Tony and was like, "Hey, man, I actually, you know, whatever," like the audience might be less inclined to believe that Tony would just like snub him. But they give him a total makeover later in the movie. But when you first see him, he sort of looks like the crypt keeper a little bit. And that's really just so that you don't sympathize with him being ghosted on a rooftop.
Well, but you also realize that it's not a makeover, right? Between ugly version Killian and present day version Killian.
What do you mean?
It's not like he put on some makeup. It's that Extremis worked for him and changed his
Extremis really is the ultimate like red pill, because that dude changed his game up entirely. He is not the same character from 13 years ago. Like, and that kind of was the like one of the parts of this movie that I couldn't get over was how distinctly different he was as a person, like as a whole, because I just like I couldn't buy it, you know? Like they didn't need to make him like weird and fidgety and stuttery and have like bad skin and like bad hair. Like they could have just made him be like a dude down on his luck, and that would have sold it just as well or even better.
No, but like I said, I think from a plot perspective in the movie, they had to make him weird looking so that the audience would all just turn against him in unison.
Well, no, I think the point of him being like weird was that like you were supposed to sympathize with him. Like Tony was supposed to be a dick back then. Like Tony was being a dick to him, and you're supposed to feel bad for him. I don't think it was to like be like, "Oh, that guy looks weird, like fuck him."
See, that was because I feel like you know, and we don't have to drag on this segment for too long, but I kind of took the thing where it's like if he had like shown up and like wasn't like being a creepy mouth breather, I might be more inclined to believe that. But they like, I mean, again, he's like a horror movie character where he's like, "Hey, Tony," you know, and then the elevator's like going to go close, and he's like, "I'm just gonna slide in here right next to you."
Okay,
you know?
well that's not how it happened at all.
I mean, that's exactly how it happened. I just saw the movie.
Anyway. What happens next?
But I'm surprised we glossed over Christian's so far favorite character in the MCU.
Oh yeah, Yinsen.
Red Skull?
No, Yinsen from the cave. He was at the Switzerland conference.
Yeah, for sure.
Why,
he was.
Though?
You're right.
But why?
Well, that's not the important part here.
Okay.
The important part here is that we've now determined that the first hero of the MCU was really Yinsen. Right? This is from a timeline perspective here.
Right,
so.
yes. Mm-hmm. I believe that all three of us have determined that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, yes.
We've taken a poll.
Yeah, so Tony and... First, I put the woman because I didn't hear her name, and turns out it's Maya. Go up to the hotel room to talk about limb regrowing, and talk about this project called Extremis, which causes an explosion in the room. And what I caught here, which I like, besides Happy jumping on Tony and then laying on top of him for an extended period of time.
Gay joke.
Ooh, gay joke.
Yeah, this is 2013. Here we are.
Yeah.
And they mentioned a joke about Y2K worries because it was midnight of 1999. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I also thought it was funny that for the actress of Maya, it's like she just looks so much like Liv Taylor that when I first saw her, I was like, wait, what's Liv Taylor doing here? But then it wasn't Liv Taylor. Anyway, back to you, Dan.
Is it Taylor or Tyler?
It's Tyler. So I actually got a comment from one of my friends, and they were like, "You really didn't correct him on Liv Taylor?" And I was like, "It's not important, but I guess we'll just take the time. It's Liv Tyler."
Okay. All right. Well, Liv Tyler, and now I know. And you know what? But I'm telling, in 100 years, everyone's gonna remember her as Liv Taylor, and that's a prophecy. Anyway, back to you, Dan.
Yeah, great. That's glorious. So we then move into current day, where we're seeing Tony now after the events of New York, after the events of going into the wormhole for a very right reason. He definitely should have brought the missile into the wormhole because he needed to, and I'm glad we all agreed on that point.
Right?
And that's what
definitely agreed.
Yeah, that was not a contentious topic.
No,
I think that's something that we completely see eye to eye on and deemed entirely necessary to the plot.
Yes. Thank you so much for agreeing.
You're so
and
welcome.
that's when we learn that he's testing Mark 42 of his Iron Man suits. And he's been up for 72 hours, according to Jarvis. And yeah, it is a long time. But again, these suit up scenes I really like, and this is the final solo Iron Man scene, or Iron Man movie, sorry. And in the future, we'll get some cool suit ups, but these Iron Man movies, I really liked how they tried to do different types of suit ups each time.
You liked this one?
Yeah, I like this one. I thought it was cool.
I kind of think that, like, I guess for me it was weird because, like, I felt like they really upped the CGI in this movie a lot. Yeah. There's like a lot of segments where I was like, damn, that's cool. But I felt like, and legit, like, not ironically, like, there were segments in this movie where I was like, and this is probably the first time in the MCU, like, because it wasn't even really like this in the Avengers for me, where some of the CGI scenes I was like, wow, they did that really well. Like, that was like, I felt that. But I kind of felt like a lot of the solo Iron Man stuff just wasn't selling it for me. Like, I felt like the CGI in this movie really shined when it was like, everything's CGI, so like everything's kind of seamlessly blending into itself. But I felt like a lot of the just more solo Iron Man things, it's like the rest of the environment isn't a CGI thing, and we'll kind of see some of this later when he is like interacting with Pepper. He like goes to rub her shoulders, and it's just weird because it's like the contrast between the CGI Iron Man suit and just the regular environment that he's in did kind of take me out of it a little bit because it looks off.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed, and it's interesting you say that you like the CG in this one, because there were a lot of points in the movie where I was like, ooh, that's not that great, or like, oh, that was comped in weird, or like the Rock's physics here are like very it shouted out that it was bad CG. And to your point, there are a lot of like really cool CG stuff. So they probably just used up all their budget on those like big moments and didn't really care about like rocks falling off a cliff. But there were a lot of points in this one, more so than the first two, or even like the first movies in the MCU, where I was like, oh, that CG is kind of iffy.
Oh yeah, that is interesting, because like I felt like maybe to maybe kind of clarify my point, I feel like this is the first movie maybe where like, because I agree with you, there were certainly points where the CGI like kind of took me out of it, but this is the first movie where there were CGI moments in it that I like didn't really have a problem with.
Right.
In all the previous movies, it was like every time CGI would happen, I was like, oh, that's fucking whatever. But there were points in this movie where a lot of things are going on, and I was just kind of like, I don't have an issue with any of this, really.
Interesting. Well, I also wonder how much of that too is, I feel like in previous movies for the CG stuff, it was very one-on-one solo CGI, like Hulk, like Thor, not in large fights maybe, but
right.
Except for the Frost Giant fight. But I feel like this one here, they were crafting big scenes around it, which
right.
Again, the rocks falling, I don't know, that didn't, but you've got a better eye for that than I do. But yeah, the big fight to end the movie, I thought was like really, really well done. The way that the suits came around and that they fell apart and everything, I felt like the physics there were really well done.
We also have a reoccurring theme happening in this movie that here you go. We're into Christians didn't like corner. Get ready to play the Christian
podcast.
Can you can you cue up the Christians didn't like corner theme music there, Dan?
Yeah, here we go.
Okay, thank you. Woo! All right, welcome everyone. Did you know it's Christmas when this movie takes place?
Yeah, it's a Christmas
because they sure make a lot of emphasis in like having subtle nods to it being Christmas literally everywhere for no reason other than like an audience thing, which is a comment I make often when it comes to MCU stuff that I just sort of don't really like, where it's like I felt like the entirety of it being like like Tony's dancing around to Christmas music and there's lights and there's trees and there's like whatever, and I'm kind of like waiting. He makes Christmas puns. He's like, "Hey, I got you a Christmas present," like that sort of stuff. But then it's like there's no real like payoff for it being. It just sort of happens at Christmas time. And I was like kind of expecting, and maybe this is my own fault, but I was like, oh, they're establishing all this Christmas stuff. We're going to have some like big Christmas thing happening. But it's just sort of peppered into the movie, and then the movie just sort of ends, and it just kind of feels like they were like, hey, it's coming out around that time. Let's get everyone into the spirit. It felt like sort of a money move.
But it's funny because you said it was released May 3rd. So like, why release a Christmas themed movie in the middle of summer?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have the answer for you there.
I will say though that like one of my favorite jokes is later on when he's in the restaurant and he's like sitting down, the kid asks him to like sign their drawing or whatever, and he looks over at this kid and he's like this little white kid with thick glasses, and he's like, "I loved you in Christmas Story, by the way," and that was like one of the funniest jokes in the movie.
Yeah, they really stepped up the comedy in this movie. I feel like this start of phase 2 is kind of like the start of the comedic kind of timing and things that we'll see throughout the rest of the MCU. Mm-hmm. Like this is the one where it's taking it to that next level, including here when he suits up for Mark 42, almost suits up all the way, says, "I'm the best." Yeah. And then gets hit over, and Jarvis is getting real sassy with him, saying, "It's a pleasure to watch you work." And I noticed that there was a lot more Jarvis in this movie.
Oh yeah, a lot
more interaction, a lot more Jarvis. I'm wondering at this point now, obviously, because when I watched these initially, Iron Man 3 came out, and then a year later, and then a year later, and whatever for more movies. But Jarvis does play a bigger role in the future. And I'm wondering if even as early as Iron Man 3, they were prepared to kind of bring Jarvis to the forefront.
Bro.
Yeah, I'm just, there's no spoilers there. I'm just saying, Jarvis.
Well, I kind of felt like in this movie too, they sort of like tried to make a leap with Jarvis into like personifying Jarvis as like a character that you're supposed to care about, whereas like in the first Iron Mans and then also the Avengers, Jarvis is really just sort of like the personal assistant, and then maybe there's like a little like quip there or whatever. But in this one, they sort of went above and beyond to try to like almost kind of humanize Jarvis a little bit. So when something bad happens to Jarvis, you're supposed to feel a certain way about it, where they didn't really do that earlier.
No, it's a good point.
Foreshadowing.
Ooh.
Interesting. Ooh. Now we get a fake Mandarin. Well, we don't know yet, but this is the Mandarin. And the reference back to the 10 Rings again. from the first movie when Tony was in the cave. And again, 10 rings, they don't really go into detail of the 10 rings here. But this is definitely something that will come up again, as it's now the second time we've heard of 10 rings.
Right, and it's very thematically on point because it's, what is Tony Stark's greatest enemy if not foreigners? So we got, it's just a direct continuation of all of the other Iron Man movies.
Yeah. Can I just say, like, the Mandarin reveal is, like, really weird because it just he kind of says a line about him like turning on the TV, but then it like very just abruptly cuts to the Mandarin in like this grainy film, and I guess we're supposed to think that it was like broadcasted to the US. Like it wasn't supposed to be like just a weird cut. It was supposed to be like, oh, this is what the US saw on TV,
right?
But it didn't come off that way. It just felt really abrupt to me. But I will say, because there are very little things about this movie that I actually liked, Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin, both as the Mandarin and as the actor, were like my favorite part of this movie by far. His Mandarin voice is like actually so menacing and like very weird and eccentric and manipulative that like I fully bought into that villain, even though he's like barely in the movie.
Well, yeah, it's funny because this, even during the trailers, I mean, obviously in the trailers of this movie, I remember back then, they didn't obviously reveal that he wasn't really the Mandarin.
Right.
But a lot of people were not like responding super well to him being the Mandarin. But what they did respond well to was his voice in the trailer, like his kind of menacing. I forgot what the line. There's one line that he says in this that was used over and over in the trailers. That just, he had just a really, really great voice for this villain.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I like it almost sort of like was reminiscent of what I feel like they were trying to do with Bane in like Dark Knight Rises or whatever, but like missed the mark. But it was like, because it's like, the voice is like weird, like it's not what you would expect it to sound like, but it like works really well. Yeah, I agree. Like that, it like caught me. I was like caught by every time that dude would talk. Like it was almost this like uncomfortable tonal shift. Like I feel like they did that really well.
It was funny because when I heard it, I was like, this sounds a lot like two things, and those two things were, I don't know why it sounded similar to me, but it was like if you ever watched, I think it's the 6th Harry Potter movie, the Prime Minister of Magic. I don't know. He has this big like monologue at the beginning of the movie, and I thought his voice was already like always really sick in that monologue. And then I also thought about Davy Jones, and then I realized those two characters are played by Bill Nye, the same actor, and yeah, I was like, oh, okay. It's just a Bill Nye
the science guy?
No, it's a British actor.
Oh, okay. Oh, well,
I don't.
I
is
think
he
it
British?
Cooler as Bill Nye, but the science guy. But that's fine. It's now we get to see our first look at Iron Patriot.
Whoa!
Yes. Yeah, no,
he's no longer the War Machine.
No, War Machine didn't go so well with the public. Yeah,
Iron Patriot
Iron
tested
Patriot,
in focus groups. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's very red, white, and blue, very Captain America style in an Iron Man suit. I mean, it looked cool. I will admit that it looked cool, but definitely different from the giant, what was that Gatling gun that was on top of War Machine in the last movie. This is definitely a toned down look for this.
Well, wasn't the Gatling gun put there by that other scientist guy?
Whiplash.
Well,
yeah.
The scientist, the other scientist guy, the other
Whiplash.
Well, it was
whatever.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
But yes, it was. But there was really no indication that he was going to change it. It's not like Rhodey was very upset by that fact when he used it. And then I thought this was interesting. We got to see Joan Rivers in a Marvel movie. That was a funny little cutaway to see that happen.
And Bill Maher.
Yeah, and Bill Maher. He didn't stand out as much to me when I watched that. I don't know. I mean, that seems, not like Bill O'Reilly.
Not like Bill O'Reilly. I know. Yeah. Hey, that's the ostensibly more famous Bill.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now we get to John's favorite line here with the Rhodey and Tony in the restaurant, and we get to see the kid come up asking for the autograph. And this is where we're kind of getting our real first look at Tony's anxiety towards what happened in New York and him definitely having to bring the missile into the wormhole. And I think we can kind of talk about this plot point at this point now, but I really like the idea of these movies, and they do this a lot now in Phase 4 with some of the TV shows, but showing the real world impact to these heroes and the real world impact to the world when these superhero movies happen, right? Like the wormhole opened up. It's clearly something that the entire world would be witness to, and seeing the Avengers and seeing the wormhole and seeing the aliens that come down and all of that. And then seeing like on the ground floor, Tony literally not handling that well and getting this kind of anxiety attack here for the first time, at least for what we're seeing. But I'm curious on you guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that that's like a fun plot thing to explore. I sort of felt like, well, like I kind of. So my initial reaction, like seeing like it's like, oh, Tony has a panic attack or whatever, is I was kind of like it felt dumb to like it's like almost sort of like a Hollywood representation of what an anxiety attack is or whatever, which I think is probably like fair because it's a Hollywood movie. But then I kind of thought about it more, and I was like, that's like definitely a nitpick that I have. But on the flip side, like, taken into context, like the time that this movie came out in like 2013, that was actually probably like kind of like, like edgy or like pushing the boundaries or whatever to show like a hero dealing with like mental health.
Right.
So like, even if it wasn't really portrayed in like a super like, I don't know. I mean, the word that almost comes to mind is like tasteful. Like it's like because like it was almost sort of like, oh, I'm having anxiety. Oh, okay, like now I'm not, like, and it just felt like it was always happening at very convenient points in the plot. Like it was sort of like putting like this like mental health thing up on kind of a pedestal for Tony to be experiencing when it was convenient or whatever. But I also think that if you look at this movie in the context of the year that it came out, it probably was like, I don't know, groundbreaking or whatever to have a character experiencing these kinds of things, because that's not something that you would, traditionally see like in a Hollywood movie. And it's sort of funny because now I think that that's almost like a trope, like you have these sort of heroic characters that are like burdened with this horrible weight of the past on them, but that wasn't really like what the trend was back then.
Yeah, I mean, So my take on it is that like, I don't know if it wasn't portrayed poorly in a sense, but like the degree to which he experienced panic attacks wasn't really that severe, which is like, it's something that happens. People do have like milder panic attacks than other people, but like for him to be dealing with such a mild panic attack doesn't really do it for me, because then I'm like, okay, so this sets you back like a tiny bit, and it's just something that you have to struggle with that you didn't have to with before, but it's not enough to really make an impact on anything that he does, in my opinion.
Obviously the movie's an hour or 2 hours, right? So I don't know that maybe we get the full look, but I think they tried to give us pieces of that in a little bit here when we come back to Tony in the back at his house talking to Pepper. But and I say that because I feel like he like really opens up at that point to discuss like how it's affecting him. And maybe it's not just the moments where we're seeing like the panic attacks where, by the way, true. I really like this moment where he's like going to leave and he walks out and the Iron Man suit's like parked like next to the motorcycles. I thought that was just a nice little touch for him to just jump right into it. get going. But yeah, I think that we only see, little moments, obviously, but we'll get into more of that when he's back at the house. But we now see Killian is normal.
What? Actually, he's like worse than normal. He's like total red pill chatted up,
arrogant.
Like,
yeah, dude.
Male.
No, I think that Killian's kind of funny because he's just sort of like the giga libertarian, which we'll get into later as the plot progresses. But it's kind of funny. Like his entire arc is just really the fact that he is like a red-pilled Chad libertarian character.
Yeah.
And we really kind of start to see it in this scene where he shows up to Stark Industries, and now Pepper is running the show.
Like, this script is 100% written by a dude because, like, because she talks about how he used to like always try to like get at her back in the day, and she wasn't having any of it. And it's like, if some dude that you didn't like and like had a bunch of red flags like 5 years ago shows up and he looks good now, you're not all of a sudden going to be like, oh, well, he's hot now, and now I'm like super infatuated with this guy. Those red flags stay there, dude.
that was a thing that I kind of noticed during this movie, and I think that so it's because essentially Killian shows up to Stark Industries. Pepper's now running the show, and he's like, yo, I have some exciting technology to show you, and he sort of takes her into a room and then manhandles her a little bit. And a thing that I kind of noticed about this movie is I've never liked Pepper as a character, right? Because I feel like Pepper, it's like you have Tony Stark, and the only thing that motivates Tony Stark is himself, right? Or Pepper. So it's like so he needs to be in peril, but he's too self-destructive to care. So then the next logical thing is that you got to put Pepper in a perilous situation, and that's how you get to move the movie forward. It's like because that's like kind of the only thing at this point that is going to sort of get him to a point where he's like, oh, okay, well now I need to do something about this because Pepper's in danger. So I feel like she's always sort of served that role. But especially in this movie, I feel like they just wrote Pepper to just be this like helpless idiot, like more than she was in previous. It's like they really like dumbed her character way the fuck down, and like she almost just sort of served as like just this sort of two-dimensional plot device, and more so than I had seen her in the previous movies.
Yeah, I think part of it though is, and I don't think it's just to Pepper, by the way. There was a lot of pushing other characters to the side to focus purely on Tony's story.
Right.
Sure.
Right? And
like,
I have gripes about that too, but we can get that later.
Well, yeah, we can get there as well. And the one thing I want to mention about this scene specifically, and also kind of ties into a couple other points in the movie, is the way they talk about technology.
Dude.
And I can't let it go. I can't. I mean, he says, we can hack into the hard drive of any living organism.
We can hack into the hard drive of any living organism, and then he has like a map of his brain like up, and he's like showing Pepper, and he's like, see this slot here? Like, and he like points to this like black part inside of his brain, and he's just like, we can slot in extra things that change your DNA on a fundamental level. And it's just like, I'm like, this is so stupid, dude. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, because you could throw out any techno babble there. Like, you'd be like, oh yeah, we have these like nano mesh fibers that like enhance the neural network, allowing capacity beyond normal here. But it's like, but literally the solution is like, oh dude, we actually map the brain. There's a hole in your brain. There's a hole in everyone's brain. Something's supposed to go in there.
Modular,
it's crazy,
by the way.
Your brains are modular. It's insane. No one figured this out yet, actually. We were just looking at CAT scans, and after a while we were like, what's this hole doing? Yeah, that's weird. Maybe we should put something in it.
Yeah, there was clearly no consultation during the writing process from a technology or science perspective.
Yeah,
it's just fucking men looking at holes and wanting to stick things in them.
Jesus Christ.
Right, and that is really emblematic of this entire scene, by the way.
Yeah. So that was these kind of fake technical terms that they utilize throughout this movie.
Right, and this isn't just a thing in this scene. This is present the whole movie is just littered with this.
Yeah, we definitely see more of it as we go through the movie.
And then he kisses Stark's girl, dude. Like, oh my God, they're standing in the middle of a brain, and he grabs her and then gives her a little kiss. And Happy notices, and could you say he's not too happy? I don't know. There's something there. Whatever. Anyway, back to you, Dan.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, sure, he's not happy. Great.
I just said that. I know.
Yeah, well, she's not happy though. So, like, because his name's Happy.
Right.
So,
I just said that.
Oh, his name is Happy, and
yeah, see, John gets it.
He's not happy.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. You're welcome. All right. And now we get to see a remote control Iron Man suit on the couch, which. By the way, there were just a couple moments in this movie where you see the Iron Man suit in situations like this, where it's like not in fight scenes, but just sitting on a couch, where maybe the CGI isn't spectacular, but I always like these kind of moments again, where like the movie brings certain themes and ideas down to earth for a second. Like, you don't normally see like Thor in his full outfit hanging out on a couch drinking a beer, right? Like, we might see that later on in Endgame, but it's just kind of interesting to see these little moments. But it was weird to see, I agree, the Iron Man suit trying to give Pepper a massage, because I think they were trying to CGI someone who was pretending to be a human inside of a suit, and the suit's hand motions trying to massage. Like, it's just weird, because just putting regular hands is not what you can mimic when you're doing it in the Iron Man suit, because the Iron Man suit moves differently than a human's hands does. So I get where the kind of difficulty could probably lie in trying to CGI the specific finger movements of trying to massage somebody in that moment. But yeah, I liked the kind of reveal here that she realized very quickly that he wasn't in the suit and that he was downstairs, obviously setting up for future moments to be able to do the same thing.
Sure.
And this is where we see what I was kind of talking about earlier. We see him kind of reveal to Pepper that he's having a real hard time. And in this moment, you guys may disagree with me, but I feel like Robert Downey Jr. in this moment sold it for me, of him talking about how he's been feeling since New York, how it's been affecting him, the fact that he's not sleeping, like that kind of stuff. He really, he feels like when I watched this that he was in really bad shape. Like, that's where I got it more than his anxiety attack from earlier. I got it more in this scene than I did from that first anxiety attack.
And like what I said before is probably unfair, because like, yeah, you're right. This whole like area of his life that has been overwritten by his panic, and like his he's like super paranoid about it, and that is definitely better representation of like his mental state than the panic attacks.
Yeah, I guess maybe to Dan's point, I felt like Robert Downey Jr. did a really good job with everything that they gave him. I just thought some of the stuff they gave him was dumb. Like, but Robert Downey Jr. did really good with it. It's like more sort of how some of the script stuff was written. I was like, I wasn't really buying it, but I bought Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of what it was that he was given to work with.
Yeah, he's a great actor.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, he I think he really did a great job in this scene.
I also sort of thought, and maybe even unintentionally, because this is like obviously just kind of being used to like get the plot to move further along, but I actually thought it was sort of a comical look at the realities of mental illness within a relationship. They actually sort of encapsulated it very nicely. Again, I don't think they did it on purpose really, but like so he's like in bed and he's like having a nightmare. And Pepper tries to wake him up, and then the pilotless suit, the remote controlled suit, comes in and is set to attack Pepper, and then she's like, I'm gonna go sleep on the couch, which is kind of in juxtaposition towards the scene before where he's opening up to her, and she's just like, I got you, Tony, whatever you need, I'm here for you. And then the very next scene is her being like, I actually fundamentally can't handle your mental illness, which again, I just kind of thought was funny because I feel like that's sort of like a relatable like topic, where if you've ever been in a situation where like someone's like really like going through some shit. And then you're like, sort of like, you know what, dude, I'm going to be the fucking rock to like help this person through the thing. And then you get like a little too close to their mental illness. And then you're like, I got to bail. This is like actually like, wait, I feel like that was like sort of juxtaposed in that moment. And I thought that thing was kind of just interesting. But again, I don't necessarily think they were trying to make a deeper point with that. I just noticed that. Like,
whether or not it was on purpose.
Right.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we will see the first instance of one of these people who have the extremis injections, who are going to actually blow up due to the injections. And so Happy is unfortunately injured as part of that attack as he is following that bodyguard.
Which is like, and this is like such a nitpick, and I get it, but I'm just like, how the fuck does Happy survive that? It's like this dude like injects some shit into his neck that essentially like turns him into like a small thermonuclear detonator, and it's like everyone is dead, like other than it's like, and not only dead, like vaporized, like it shoots through, like everyone's just deleted, and then you just have Happy and like some dog tags, and it's like other than these two relevant plot things. And it kind of goes into, again, I feel like a lot of times Marvel movies, it's like if you want to know what's going to happen next, he's got to think about like what the most convenient possible thing in the moment is going to be, and then that's exactly what happens. And it was weird to me. It's like the devastation was so absolute that not but a crater was left in the scorched earth. And then also there's Happy and then some dog tags that'll help Tony track the dude down later.
Yeah, but
okay, what's your but? This is a hard point to defend, Dan. I'm interested.
No, I don't think it is, because I think he, in that moment, is not standing right next to the person who's going to explode. And not only that, he has enough time to react, run, and get behind that thing. But we also see the distance at which things are affected in Tennessee when we see the second explosion. And if you notice, the crater is like 4 feet away from the marks on the wall where the people's shadows are due to the explosion. And at that point, Happy is bare minimum 40 feet out from the explosion and behind a structure in that moment. And it's not like he gets up and walks away and everything's fine, right? He's in the hospital for the entirety of the movie, out in a coma, like doesn't wake up.
Yeah, that was kind of a thing I didn't get, is that the crater that Happy's in is like fucking gigantic, but the crater in Tennessee is like super tiny. But like they show both craters. It's a tiny ass crater in Tennessee, and it's like a big ass crater in like.
See, I didn't think it was a big ass crater in the first one. I thought there was debris everywhere, which made it look shitty, obviously in the general area. But the crater itself, I didn't see as being much bigger.
Well, explain the dog tags then, Dan. Explain the dog tags.
Look, dog tags are made to survive 3,000 degree Celsius explosions.
Okay.
And you don't know, they might be made of vibranium. Partly.
Yeah, they injected
vibranium dog tags.
Yeah, they injected the extremis into the dog tags.
Oh, right. Okay.
Came back.
Sure.
That's what happened. So
okay, cool.
I'll not take any further comments on the dog.
You're right. That's not a hard point to defend. I completely agree with you. I had never thought of it like that. That's actually a fantastic scene, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, Happy is the one who's going to push Tony over the edge here when it comes to the Mandarin, because now it's personal. We get another Mandarin scene talking about fortune cookies.
This is one of my favorite parts, too, because he's like, a little fact about fortune cookies. They look Chinese. They sound Chinese. I don't know, man. The lines that they give this guy, it's just funny that they have Ben Kingsley, a dude who is like not Asian, deliver this line about how fortune cookies look Asian or like look Chinese. It's just because people probably already didn't like the fact that he wasn't Asian to begin with. Being called the Mandarin. Like, I'm pretty sure the Mandarin is an Asian character. And so just to give this white dude this line about fortune cookies. Oh, cherry on top.
Yeah.
Good job, Iron Man
it was
3.
yeah. Well, and I feel like maybe this was also kind of subtle hints to the audience that maybe, hey, this isn't the Mandarin. Obviously, which we end up finding out later. And also, I don't remember at the time when it first came out, but I wonder too if people were like, this is just really odd. Like something's really off about them casting Ben Kingsley in this role, since they've already mentioned the 10 rings, and it seems like the 10 rings don't play a big role, but somehow they're putting Mandarin in here. I don't know. But I do remember watching this in the movie theater and people like losing their mind when it turns out that he is not actually the Mandarin.
Sure.
This was a really talked about thing when this first happened, and a lot of people tried to keep spoiler free for the people who hadn't seen the movie yet.
Yeah, we have so then we have the scene where Stark is being accosted by reporters, and everyone's snapping pictures, and he is and they say, "Hey, what do you think about this, Mr. Stark?" And he's like, you know what? Here's my home address. I'm going to give this to you, and if you want to come to kill me, you son of a bitch, come do it at my house. And then he takes the guy's phone and smashes it for some reason, which I didn't really get the point of.
Yeah, because that guy said he wanted him to go kill him.
Right.
And Tony, he's not a killer, okay?
Right, but then he was like, I will kill him. I'm going to kill him. Fuck you. And he's like, is that what you wanted? And then he takes the guy's phone and he breaks it. Yeah, and it's just like, okay, I guess.
Well, yeah, no, I get it, because the paparazzi and the media fucking suck, and he's probably just like, fuck you.
Yeah, but he's like surrounded by them. It would have made more sense if he was just. But
it's the inciting.
It would have been cooler if he just started smashing.
He just
cameras.
went on a rampage.
That would have been tight.
Cameras.
He's like, he grabs one guy's phone, and he grabs another guy's phone. I would have liked that scene more.
Yeah, I bet. Well, the Mandarin wastes no time because literally in the next scene, Maya's gonna show up to the house to warn Tony that maybe he's playing with fire here in the way that he shouldn't be, and they waste absolutely no time, and we've got 3 helicopters coming into the area to shoot missiles into Tony's house, which, by the way, I don't think anyone needed the address to determine where Tony's house was.
I think that was all for theater.
Right. It was, yeah. It was definitely for theater. I would agree.
We also get like a classic dumb movie line in here, and it is such a classic dumb movie line where like Tony and Pepper are arguing over something, and Maya's in the living room, and there's like live footage of Tony's house, and then Maya goes, guys, and then looks over at the TV as the missile's coming towards the house, and I enjoyed that.
Like, she says, "Is this something we need to worry about?"
Just, guys.
Yep, I know. Well, this is the scene where John does not like the rocks from the falling house.
No. The rocks, the bad rocks come later when he calls all of the suits out. It's Act 3 fight. That's when that happens.
Oh, you mean when the hole in the ground is opening up and Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'll say during this too that like to sort of like rebuke a previous point I made perhaps a bit, because I gave kind of a nice review of the CGI. When the missiles hit the house and Tony and Pepper are flying through the air, that shit sucked. Like, that was like so not good. Like, and not believe it was weird. It didn't look right. And then when they're flying through the air, and then Tony like kind of selflessly gives Pepper a suit like in slow motion, and they're like both flying, like that whole thing was so janky to me. Like that segment, I wasn't a fan.
I get what you mean. But also it's a really hard shot to do, so I kind of just like give him a lot of leeway with that. Because it wasn't immersion breaking for me. It was just like, oh, that's a little weird, but it's fine. I will say though that when he's like on the ground. There's rubble falling, and there's one about to hit him in the face, and she like crawls over him in the Iron Man suit. I thought that was kind of hot, and if anyone wants to replicate that with me, that'd be cool. Hit me up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will.
Because you only see the Iron Man suit and not her face, and that you
I just want someone
him.
to dress up in the Iron Man suit and crawl over me.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay,
Hell
that makes sense. But this is also the first look in the fact that Tony is thinking about Pepper when designing these suits and thinking about her safety and kind of the future of what things, they may run into, where Pepper may also need some type of support to be able to survive these types of instances. So I thought that was pretty interesting to see the suit be able to already be pre-programmed to go to Pepper like that.
I mean, the man's paranoid. He's got backups on backups, except for a sensor to tell if missiles are coming at his house. That he doesn't have a backup for that one.
Yeah. I guess that's true.
Yeah, I mean, and there was like a lot of stuff here too. Like Maya just walks up, and then they like kind of try and explain it away because Tony's like, "Oh, hey, I thought I put the system on high alert.
Yeah.
Dang it!" But I'm like, I don't accept that as an explanation. Like, what the fuck, dude? But yeah, so then like Pepper and Maya like get clear of the house. Tony gets a suit, and it's really nice of the bad guys to like not shoot him until he gets his Iron Man suit. Just a thing I noticed. It's like there's bullets flying everywhere and everything's missing him until he gets the suit on, and then the bullets are like bouncing off the suit, and it's like that was cool that they waited. But
I don't think the point of this was to kill Tony. Right, because Killian clearly wants Tony to work on his project. The whole point of Killian coming to Tony and coming to Pepper and all this is that he needs Tony to develop Extremis to be what it could be without people becoming bombs, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, that's just the way that
fire,
I view it.
Wi-Fi missiles.
Why even? So why blow up his house with missiles while he's inside? Is it because you just
make the Mandarin a real threat?
Right, because you just like trust Tony's ability to survive that.
Well, yes.
Huh.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a big assumption to make.
It's a big assumption. I will say though that like this next scene, check it out. This is another exciting addition. Do you have the theme music ready there, Dan? Whoa, hey, welcome to Christian's corner of things he actually kind of liked.
Oh, here we go.
It's a new addition. I thought the scene where he gets like the electrical cord wrapped around his neck and then pulled down into the bottom of the ocean, that was cool. I was like, the whole time I was watching it, I was like, hey, that's fun. Fuck it, dude. Like, I will say in this movie more than other ones that we've watched, because I sit there and I write down like little observations while I'm watching these movies, and this one more than other ones had moments where like I'm not furiously scribbling. Like something happens and I actually just sit there and I just kind of watch it. And this was one of those parts too, where he's like kind of getting pulled down and like the thrusters aren't working. And Jarvis is like, everything's fucked up, dude. Like it's not good. And then he gets kind of buried under rubble under the ocean. I was just sort of like, oh, that's fun. But then they also sort of do the very convenient, again, Marvel thing where it's like the thrusters aren't working. We don't have working thrusters, and then just when it looks like all hope might be lost, they're like, okay, now the thrusters are online, and then he gets himself out of the ocean, where it's just kind of, again, it's just sort of this like point of convenience where it's like,
well,
okay.
I mean, the alternative would be he dies.
Right, of course, but I get that. Like, it's a very minor nitpick, but I'm just saying that happens a lot in these movies, where it's just like he ambiguously can't do something until this equally ambiguous point in the future, where now suddenly he just can, because mechanics behind the scenes now have lined up in such a way where he's allowed to do it and don't think about it too much.
Yes, exactly. Don't think about it too much. God damn.
Yeah, it's a fucking
Marvel at least movie. You get it now. I did like how the gauntlet comes off though and pulls him out of the water like that. I thought that was pretty cool.
It was kind of like, wouldn't that like depressurize his suit, like fuck his hand
that's
up
why
or something?
Jarvis says, "Hold your breath." And because the water's going to get flooded into
that's
the suit.
why Jarvis says, hold your breath. Okay, I get that. That's fun.
Yeah, so now you like that scene even more.
Now
right?
I like that scene even more. Good job, Dan.
Oh, wow. God,
that's crazy.
I feel like a winner today.
Yeah.
Cool. He ends up 5 miles outside of Rose Hill, Tennessee, which is where he had pre-programmed the suit previous to these missile attacks. And we get to see the first look at the kid with the potato gun, Harley. And then we also realize that Stark has been presumed dead at this point.
Dude, there is a very funny part in this scene, and I noticed it. Well, it's probably not what you think it is. And then I rewinded the movie just to make sure that I had seen it correctly. Because Harley comes in with the potato gun, and first of all, I don't like this character. I get it's like it's there trying to like humanize Stark, because again, it's the classic. It's like if there's a child in peril, the hero will save him, and it sort of endears the audience to the hero. But if there's a child in peril based upon a bad guy, it makes the bad guy seem even worse in juxtaposition. We've seen it over and over and over in these movies, but there's like a scene where Harley comes in, has a potato gun. Also, Dan just made a face at me. We have seen it over and over. I just want to say really quick, but like
nobody would have known that I made that face.
Right, I'm telling the audience the face was made.
God.
But so Harley comes in, whatever, and then they have this like little like conversation where like. He's like, "Oh, are you Iron Man?" And he's like, "I'm the mechanist, which
the mechanic.
I'm Christian Bale. Anyway, but he which is also kind of a juxtaposition that comes up later, because like at this point in the movie he's sort of not referring to himself as Iron Man anymore, but that's a theme so now he's like, "I'm the mechanic," like he's not calling himself Iron Man. And that's important for the overall theme of the story. But anyway, the kid's like, "You're supposed to be dead," and he hands him like a newspaper that says like, Tony Stark dead or whatever. But that scene's like funny because he's not like, he doesn't like, he's just holding a newspaper. Like he walks in and he's not holding a newspaper. And then they're talking, and then a newspaper materializes in his hand that he then like gives to Tony. And it's just a little thing I caught that I was like, "Oh shit, look at that!" And then I rewinded it to make sure. But there's no indicate. It's a seamless transition between him not holding a newspaper and now suddenly a newspaper has just popped up in his hand and he hands it to Tony. And I just thought that was fun.
Yeah, the kid just had a newspaper on hand.
Yeah, he just has a newspaper that he didn't pick up from anywhere or whatever, and he's not holding it when he walks in. It's not present in the scene anywhere. They're talking, it's cutting back and forth, and then it cuts to Tony, cuts to him, cuts to Tony, cuts to him, and he just has a newspaper in his hand that he's holding that he then just gives to Tony.
Yeah, if there's one thing that we know about kids, it's that they love reading the newspaper.
Right.
Yeah, this is 2013 when all kids had newspapers in the back pocket.
And they love just materializing objects out of thin air. Like that guy was like the real superhero.
Yeah, I loved doing that when I was a kid.
It turns out Harley is actually Loki.
Right, yeah, damn it. Yeah, and the newspaper is the staff. The staff can turn into a newspaper. That's another thing it does.
Oh, Jesus. So we get our first interactions between these two. Tony drops a little P word here.
Oh yeah, that's fun. Yeah, the kid's like, P-word. Yeah, the kid's like, "I don't have a dad." And Tony's like, "Quit being a pussy."
Yeah.
Which that was so funny to me. I was like,
dude. I didn't remember it or expect it in this moment.
I know,
but damn, this is funny. Again, like this, the comedy in this movie really is stepped up from the previous Phase 1 movies as a whole.
Yeah, and it is also kind of funny to like watch some of these like big popular because the thing about like a popular blockbuster movie is that like they're not going to try to do anything that is going to like, be like a scandal or deemed like so offensive that it might like, hurt their bottom line or like lose them out on money. It's like these things kind of tend to follow whatever the popular current trends are. And so it has been interesting, like going back and watching these like old, like huge Hollywood blockbusters. And it's just like, I mean, in this movie, it's like we already had a gay joke. And then also he like calls the kid a pussy. And I just wonder if you would really see that within the current Marvel canon. I feel like these things are almost sort of time capsules to like a older era. There's also sort of to talk to a point that we had kind of brought up before. One thing in this scene that happened that I thought was kind of dumb is that the kid's looking at the suit and he's like, oh, this is cool, but I would have added some retro flex mechanics to make it go stealth mode. And Tony's like, what a great idea. I should do that. And it's kind of like, does this kid like possess knowledge of these suits that like Tony isn't that something that like Tony would have already thought of? Like,
it doesn't. Well, two things. One, the shield ship, whatever the fuck it was called now, had those panels, and clearly the ship was revealed as part of what happens in the Avengers movie, right? Sure. So it's not unrealistic to think that like people now know about this thing that fell out of the sky during everything that happened in the Avengers movie, and then to take that material and put it on a Iron Man suit is not a stretch. I don't think that Tony never thought about it. I don't think that.
See, I feel like he was just humoring the kid at that point.
But see, but Tony like doesn't humor the kid at all in any of the other, and so many of his deliveries are these like sarcastic. And now this is just going to get into a thing of like personal interpretation of the scene that will never end, so we can brush past. I'm just saying that it's like he's just like snarky, and then the kid says this thing. He's like, oh, that's actually a really good idea. I should.
Yeah, but why would he give him that? Is my point. If he's continuing to be snarky and not giving him anything,
right? Because he's only like nice to people when it benefits. Like he's like, oh, like you're my intellectual equal in this moment. We're setting it up for the audience that you're like a really smart kid. It's like, oh, you provide some sort of scientific benefit to the situation, and now the whole audience will look upon this and realize that it's like, oh, this kid knows what he's talking about. Which is also kind of like, again, convenience. It's like, oh, okay, out of all the places in Tennessee, fucking Stark ends up in this like, it's like the first building he finds is like a warehouse capable of like producing shit, and it's this kid, and where are the parents? We get a little line about the mom. Maybe they're just sort of absentee. I don't know, dude. Anyway, convenient. Marvel convenience. This is a big Marvel convenience scene for me.
Yeah. I actually like the dynamic between Tony and the kid. I didn't like the kid actor. I thought the kid actor was trash, but when he is just being a kid and like nonstop rapid fire asking questions, that worked because it was just him being a kid and delivering lines as a kid would. But when he actually had to show emotion and act, that's when I was like, I don't care about this kid at all. But I like that it showed like the kind of like human, like you said, the human side of Tony, like the one that actually cares about people, even if he is like a sarcastic asshole.
Yeah. And this is where Maya shows up with Pepper to say, I think my boss is working with the Mandarin. That's why I wanted to warn Tony. And then we see Killian walking into the soundstage room where they film the Mandarin videos, which is now showing us that, yes, it is factual that Killian is working with the Mandarin. Still no reveal as to the fact that it's not. Yeah, calling him master, and everyone seems to be in on it. It's unclear at that moment how many people are in on it, but later on we end up realizing that a lot of people around him seem to know as well, which, again, keeping that secret under wraps is pretty impressive with all the technology that's around there. And then Tony and the kid will go check out the bomb site in Rose Hill, Tennessee. And this is where we see the crater size. This is where we see the shadows on the wall of the people that were incinerated in that moment. And it was
and they went to heaven. But then the guy that didn't leave a shadow, it's because he went to hell.
I actually really like that explanation because that is some shit that like the local people would come up with.
Right. That's like for sure. I kind of grew up in like a small town too, you know, and it is true. Like if there was an explosion and there were 6 shadows, but then the guy that exploded didn't, there probably would have been a lot of religious dogma tied to that like memorial site.
Yeah, and then we get the rapid fire questions triggering Tony again to have his panic attack in the streets while talking about New York.
So like this is one of the last times that we see him have a panic attack, I think, in the movie. And this is something that like I wanted to touch on at least once, is that they don't really matter. Like the panic attacks don't really matter. Tony's struggle with PTSD and panic attacks don't really matter to the story or his like overall character arc, I think, in this movie, because it just kind of like he comes off of the Avengers and now he has PTSD, and then at the end of the movie he's just like somehow like okay.
I mean, to end the movie, he kind of is saying that he's gonna like take a clean slate, obviously with the clean slate protocol and getting rid of all the suits and starting fresh and all that. But this is not the last time that we see Tony's anxiety affect him, right? So it's not like this is it, and now all of a sudden he's great for the rest of the movies that he's a part of through Endgame, you know?
Yeah, I'm just saying it wasn't like it wasn't cohesive. Like a lot of the themes in this movie aren't very cohesive because you have the panic attack thing, and then you have like him connecting with the kid, which doesn't really, I mean, like it plays a part in like humanizing Tony, but humanizing Tony wasn't really like a theme that was strung throughout the entire movie. It's just like they have a bunch of like cool things that they're doing with the character, but none of them mesh together in this movie. Like they kind of make them points of growth throughout the entire MCU, but as a movie on its own, none of them really do anything for each other. And I have one more point later on about a theme that isn't really cohesive with the rest of the movie either, but we'll get to that one.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we have here we have another string of convenient Marvel things. A bunch of convenient Marvel things all happen at once. He shows up to a bar to meet with the mother of the guy who blew up. And conveniently enough, she's at the bar, which is good fortune. And conveniently enough, she also has a file of classified documents for some fucking reason. She's set there to meet someone else to give them the files. Conveniently, Tony finds her before that's set to happen, and conveniently, she doesn't realize that Tony isn't the one that's supposed to get the files. And wouldn't you know, it's so convenient, because after he gets the files, the person that was going to take the files away and blow the whole thing sky high actually walks into the bar as this is transpiring. So if this had happened 2 minutes later, things wouldn't have been so convenient for your boy Tony Stark.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a movie with a written script.
Nope, you're not allowed to do that. It's not.
Also, they weren't her files. To be clear, they were her son's files that he would have had at the house that he lived at, right? And so it's not like she just had classified information for funsies, right?
Right, because when people undergo very experimental military procedures, they just say, okay, here's a manila envelope full of secrets. Please put this somewhere safe in your home. And it says classified across it, so you should understand the severity of this. We need you to have this, just for your own reference, but just make sure no one else sees this.
I mean, there might have been a previous president who took home classified information to their place in Florida. Anyways,
I was
they were
joking
just acting out Iron Man
when
3.
I said at the top that this was a political podcast, Dan.
I'm just saying, life events are following Iron Man 3. I guess that's what my point is.
Oh, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess that Iron Man 3 was what was really ahead of its time, not your opinion.
Right, sure,
I think
okay.
that's what it really was.
Granted, yeah.
Yeah, so they get into some fights here, and we really see the healing powers of Extremis in this moment as the fake Homeland Security lady walks through fire. And I was curious, seeing these, it reminds me of like horror movies where you see monsters that have those very like broken limbed kind of weird movements and stuff. As she was coming out of the fire, it almost reminded me of kind of like a monster in a horror movie, the way that she was coming out of that. And as our resident horror aficionado, Christian, I'm curious if you also think that as well.
Yeah, I actually thought those scenes were really well done. I like legit. Like those were parts of the movie I actually enjoyed. I thought that and it was even kind of like that in Hulk too, honestly, where it's like I know that we just spent the entire time shitting on Hulk, and I will happily shit on Hulk anytime it comes up. But I will say that I thought it was
Dan gave it a 7, by the way.
Yeah, I know, dude. What the fuck? But I will say that I thought the end of Hulk was actually kind of a high point for me, because I like when they sort of okay, so maybe this is a more succinct way to say it. Superpowers are inherently scary. It's inherently kind of a scary thing if there's a malfeasant entity intent on doing you harm, and you fundamentally don't have the ability to stop it in meaningful way, right? So I feel like that theme doesn't get explored that often, because it's it's just sort of oh, it's a guy with powers fighting another guy with powers, and it's bright and sunny, and they're flying around the sky, and it's it's kind of campy. But I liked how with some of the villains in this one, they sort of they almost kind of make them Terminator style entities, where it's you can't do shit to them. They're glowing red, they're burnt, they look disfigured and evil, they're coming at you, and despite Tony's best attempts, the best that he can hope to do is just sort of stall them while he's working out a larger plan. And I did think that was cool. I do, however, also think that it suffered from a thing that is again pretty common in the MCU, where it's she's super strong and busting down doors and throwing Tony around rooms, but then there's a point where he kind of has her in a chokehold thing, and she takes a second to get out of it. It's this shit. It's she's really, 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 really strong, but then sometimes it's she loses the ability to be really strong when there needs to be a little tension, and then she digs deep within her and then finds the strength to be superpowered again, and her power level kind of goes from 10 to 1 to 10 to 1 to 10 to 1 throughout the entire thing. But I do like how at the end it's the only way that he could finally finish her off was he had to electrocute her on some he had to do damage that was so severe that she couldn't just regenerate from it. But also hey, pretty convenient that explosion knocked her into some power lines, isn't it? It's a pretty lucky those were there.
Yeah, it was lucky.
It was.
I just have one. This is an extreme nitpick. Okay,
here we go.
This is extreme nitpick, but Extremis is supposed to have the power to regenerate your lost limbs or whatever, and super healing powers. So why does she still have scars on her face?
I guess the question is, are scars something that would need to regenerate?
Well, I mean, if you're
when you get the injections,
it's dead.
Yeah, I guess.
Right?
I hadn't really thought about it, but I guess that is kind of true, because it's he's blasting other people in the face and they're just fully healing, but then for whatever reason she just still maybe it's if I can play the role of Dan for a moment. Okay, let me just put on my Dan hat really quick. I'm a fucking idiot. Joking. No, if I could play the role. Yeah, thank you so much. If I could play the role of Dan for a minute, maybe it's because like. Well, no, that wouldn't make sense. I was going to say injuries you sustain before you get the injection, but it's like she didn't have an arm, and that healed. Yeah, you're right. I don't like that either. That's fucking with me now.
I don't know that the body interprets a scar as something that needs to be solved or fixed. That's what I'm trying to get to, is like Extremis is essentially boosting some part of the body by slotting in something into this empty hole in someone's brain, apparently. But the brain has to then trigger the healing process, and if the brain doesn't consider a scar to be something that needs to be regenerated, then it wouldn't, right? So if she had that scar and it doesn't affect the use of her body in any way, shape, or form, and doesn't affect the functionality, the Extremis wouldn't need to regenerate that. You know what I mean? Like if she were to cut that part of her face off, then the scar would go away. That's the way that I view it.
Yeah, I think I see both of your points, and I think that my what I can rest on in this is that Indy, Dan, I can see your headcanon and accept that as headcanon, but I think John's right in that initially it was an oversight.
Well, I'm so
That's
shocked.
what I think.
I'm so shocked.
Hey, I accept your headcanon. That is a fair explanation.
It's as logical as
something
the
that, to something that was never meant to be looked into at all. Yeah.
Well, I don't think anybody ever expected anyone would look at these movies in such detail that we are, so I guess that's a good point.
Yeah, maybe.
Cool. Okay, so now we're again with the Mandarin and the 10 Rings, and we've got the accountant for the Roxxon Oil Corporation. And if the president doesn't call in 30 seconds, he's gonna shoot him right in the head. And the president decides to call and shoots him anyways.
Yeah, that was fucking sick, dude. I like that. I was like, yeah, dude. I was like, fuck yeah. Dude. No, that was like the moment in time when I was just kind of like, the Mandarin's cool. I still wasn't totally sold. I was like, maybe I was on the fence. It could go either way. And then after he's like, the president needs to call me, and then I won't kill this guy. And then the president calls, he just shoots him anyway. I was like, that's badass, dude. Like that was sick.
Yeah, and I knew that you would like that moment, and I also figured that you wouldn't know that he's not really the Mandarin.
I didn't at that point.
Which made me laugh harder because I knew that you were gonna like this character more and more, and then realize that he's not really that character. And
right.
Then I guess we'll get to that here in a little bit.
Another nitpick that I just have to get this in because during that scene where he's talking to the president and it's like being broadcast on all the TVs, there's like this scene in a bar. It's like a very darkly lit bar, and it like they have like 4 TVs in the bar, and you can totally tell that the scene of the Mandarin that was being broadcast to the televisions wasn't actually happening in studio. They just like took the video and then like cropped it and tracked it onto the screens of the TVs in the scene in post. And I was just like, why didn't you just it's such an easy thing to get right. I don't know why you had to do that in post. But
did it look bad? I don't remember.
Oh, dude, I paused the movie and I laughed at it for like 5 minutes.
Jesus, okay.
Anyway,
well, this is where Iron Patriot's gonna be sent to find the Mandarin,
right? And now we get a little classic Iron Man movie. It's doing what Iron Man does best, which is harassing people in Pakistan. That's really. I was like, are we going to see a scene where he goes to Pakistan and fucks with people? And you know what? I was starting to get worried that might not be in this movie. But fortunately, we got that.
Well, this brings us to my next favorite segment of the show, where I talk about technology things that don't make any sense.
Whoa. Hey, look at that.
And this one is Iron Patriot holding his hand to his head as he talks on the phone.
Yeah, right.
There's... The phone is in his helmet. the mic is in his helmet because his voice doesn't necessarily come out of the suit like he's talking into a microphone in his hand or something. Everything's in the helmet. So there's multiple times in this movie where in the Iron Man suit and the Iron Patriot suit, they hold their hand to their head as they're talking on the phone for no reason. This is only in this movie. It didn't happen in Iron Man 2. Didn't happen in Avengers when Tony was trying to call Pepper. It's not like he was holding the missile with one hand and holding his hand to the other to his head to try to talk to Pepper.
And I just like to remind
so this is another weird
of
thing.
what your role is in this podcast is to make us.
I know. The technology things I can't get past them.
Yeah.
I work in IT. It just it doesn't. I can't get past it.
Sometimes when I'm in the grocery store and I'm wearing my AirPods and I get a phone call, I'll answer it, but then I'll still kind of hold the phone up close to my face a little bit, even though it doesn't I know it doesn't matter, but I'm signaling to the people around me that I'm not insane. I'm like, no. See, I'm taking a phone call right now. So maybe in that moment, Iron Patriot was just a little self-conscious that
in front of the people who didn't understand anything he was saying or understand why he was there. Yeah, that makes sense.
They did understand because they laugh at his password.
Yeah, that's true.
Again, also, why is the speaker to the phone loud enough that people outside? Yeah, so none of the technology.
Broadcasting out to these Pakistani civilians that he's threatening with violence.
Yeah, let me be super clear. I know I'm picking on these technology things in the moment, but I actually really enjoyed this movie. But I can't let things go if they really did affect me like that.
Right.
Which unfortunately now we're gonna see another section here because now we are seeing Tony trying to find a way to get into his system to be able to hack in and get to the internet, and he gets into this news van, and his biggest fan with the same facial hair catches him in the news van where we hear another technology thing. God damn it!
And it's pretty convenient that he ended up inside of this van with the guy that was his number one fan, who he could talk a little shop with. Anyway, back to you, Dan.
Well, of course, yeah. And then he tells him, "I need you to pump up the ISDNs."
Yeah.
That's not.
What is an ISDN?
Not it. ISDN stands for Integrated Services Digital Network, which is essentially transmitting data and voice through phone lines.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with satellite or internet service or getting faster internet. So saying pump up the ISDNs is nothing. Now, if he said pump up the Mbps, oh, okay. All right. Now we're actually talking in the realm of possibility. And what's funny is that right before he says that line, he runs a speed test on speedtest.net, actually. And it says Mbps on the fucking screen right there. So, look, don't mess with technology in these movies, okay? Just, if you're going to do it, make it so scientifical that there's no background for it, or don't talk about it at all. Because that's the only thing that will trigger me in these movies is terrible usage of terms of technology.
Agreed.
Yeah. So Tony's able to find interviews of people who've gone through the extremis trials and see that when is a bomb not a bomb? It's when it's a misfire.
When it's a misfire.
So this is what you guys probably missed, right? Okay, so the villain of the movie, his name is the Mandarin, right? And he's giving Tony he's dropping little clues, whether it's on purpose or not. And so Tony eventually gets led to the question of when is a bomb not a bomb? And the answer is in the villain, when it's a man.
Yes.
Duh.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Rin.
Yeah,
Obviously.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. You got it.
Okay, great.
I'm glad you're tracking
that
with me.
was Yeah, duh.
Rin.
Yeah, Rin. Okay. Rin, yeah.
Oh, that was a good podcast, everybody.
Yep, that's it. Thank you so much. We do get another Tony anxiety attack, by the way. And this is where he's left the news station. He's heading wherever he's going. to try to take down the people at this Miami, Florida house, which is where Jarvis has discovered they are doing the Mandarin videos from. And he pulls over to the side of the road and has his anxiety attack before the kid kind of talks him down from it to get him to be a mechanic, right? Why don't you build something? And Tony goes, yeah, okay, that's a good idea. And gets back in the car and goes and decides to build something. So I think this is the last time we see the anxiety attacks spawn up for Tony in this moment. And so he makes a bunch of weapons.
Yep, and then we get like a Hitman style infiltration sequence where he, armed with a bunch of homemade weapons, runs around murdering goons.
Yeah,
I love that Home Depot just like allowed him to buy all the ingredients for like bombs, and they were like, "Oh, he's white. It's fine. It's fine."
Yeah. I mean, you probably could. Like, I don't know. I could probably go to Home Depot and just buy the ingredients for bombs. White. You know, that's true. I am very white. Yeah. So.
Like very, extremely.
Yeah,
like you had a mullet for a long time. Do you still have a mullet? I don't know.
No,
I used to have a mullet.
It's gone now.
Yeah, okay. it gets very hot in the Arizona summertime. So I decided.
I'm aware.
Yeah, I sacrificed style for comfort this summer.
Yeah, well, Tony now discovers the Mandarin. There he is. He's sitting. He's coming out of the bathroom saying how nobody should go in there. Classic. Ace Ventura line popping out of the bathroom.
Yeah,
no one should go in there.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, that didn't feel totally necessary to me. Like, I don't know, I noticed that. I'm just like, does this movie like need a shit joke? Like what do we lose right now?
Well, I thought it was a nice stark contrast.
Well, hey, like Tony. Oh my God.
I think it was meant to, in that moment, make the audience go, wait, what the fuck is going on, as he walks out of this bathroom and makes a weird comment in a different accent. Did it need to be a poop joke? Personally, I think it did.
Right, yeah. Well, you would.
I think that all humor in the end comes back to poop jokes.
Sure, yeah. Which also makes sense as to why you're such a big fan of Marvel.
Yeah, exactly, because of the poop jokes. I really, again, the performance here of Ben Kingsley, I think John mentioned it earlier too. I really like both of his portrayals, the evil guy and the Looney Tune of Trevor Slattery. And when he starts to fall asleep as Tony's talking to him was just so good. I loved this whole scene of them talking to each other. And him trying to get the information out of him of who he is. This was really well done on both sides, in my opinion.
There's also a part in this scene where it's like there's like two like women in the bed that are kind of implied to be prostitutes, and then he sort of shoos them away so that they can have a conversation, and then they both walk into the bathroom, and they're like, "Ew, it smells like shit in here," and I always like whenever I see scenes like these in movies, it always kind of cracks me up because I just imagine like an actress like really trying to make it in Hollywood. You know, she like moves out, she like, you know, leaves her small town, changes her name to like a stage name, gets a bunch of plastic surgery to, you know, like be able to sort of have the Hollywood look, is going to auditions, is going to casting calls, like living in like shitty apartments, just like throwing everything to the wall. Finally gets the role, like auditions to be like prostitute girl in Iron Man, and you know it's not like the lead role that she really wanted, but hey, fuck it, she's canon in an MCU movie, this is gonna look really good, hopefully she can sort of springboard this into other things. She sort of excitedly calls her family and friends, tells them that the audition went well, she got the role, now she's at a bar, they're all having drinks, everyone's like really, really happy for her, you know, she sort of stars in her eyes, sees her future unfolding in front of her, and then she's just the butt of a shit joke.
The butt of a shit joke.
Or this person then gets to be in a $1.2 billion grossing movie that was the 16th movie ever to hit over $1 billion. Yeah. And she gets to say that she had some type of role in that movie, regardless of what it was.
Right. And she's like, oh, I was in Iron Man 3. And they're like, oh, really? Like, what part? And she's like, yeah, don't watch it. You know, don't. I was the hot girl that was offended by the smell of fecal matter in Iron Man 3.
So something that was like really weird to me about this this scene was how like tonally dissonant it got, and I guess that was the point that they were trying to do, because like Tony's invading this like secret headquarters thing by himself, and he's supposed to be like the main villain of the story, and then you find out that he's not, and he's just some like weird dude. But it doesn't remove the fact that they did have like drugged up prostitutes lying around the house for this guy, and the scene of him just like walking in, and the prostitute is like, one of the girls is on the couch. We're assuming that they're prostitutes, right? I mean, because like I had an argument with one of my friends that like, were they prostitutes or were they sex slaves? I don't know. It's Miami, so it's probably prostitutes. But also, like, can we put it past these guys to not have sex slaves? I don't know. It's kind of weird. Also, this is a Disney movie, so like either way you spin it, there are prostitutes in this Disney movie. But also, like, this chick is like super out of it. She's super drugged up, and she's being kind of held at gunpoint by this like henchman with a gun, and it's just really weird for Tony to like break in there and kind of like threaten these prostitutes to get in the bathroom, and then they play it all off as a joke afterwards. Right. It's just the entire sequence
he's like killing everyone, and then he comes in and like points a gun at them, and then is like, hey, get in the bathroom, and they're like, ew, it smells like shit.
I thought the entire thing was just like weirdly dark and like.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Well, now we get to see what Killian's been up to this whole time, and we get Tony gets captured. He gets brought to some dungeon-ish part of the house and is tied up. And Killian will come in and talk about what he's been doing, and that he wants Tony to work on Extremis to be able to finalize it and make sure that people don't blow up. We also see that Pepper has been injected with Extremis. And that he better help out, or she's gonna get exploded.
Right, just
like the other ones.
Yeah, and also, like, again, I mean, it sort of speaks to what I was saying like earlier, but I feel like they just did Pepper fucking dirty in this movie, dude. Because again, it's just this like classic damsel in distress. It's like that's sort of all she really amounted to, like throughout this thing. And even like when they're like, "Oh, we have Pepper and we shot her full of drugs," it like kind of made me roll my eyes, because it's just sort of it's like of course you did, like that's like, you know, that's Pepper in this movie, just perpetually in distress, in needing of being saved by Tony.
Yeah, and Killian just shoots Maya. Maya's dead.
That was fucking cool,
just
dude.
like that.
I was stoked about that. I was like, hell yeah. I mean, it sucks that, like, you know, the Liv Tyler lookalike couldn't be like, you know, whatever in the movie a little bit more. But, you know, she got to play her role as the classic Marvel hot girl for the film, you know, and I think she did it all right. Like, why not?
Well, I think the most impactful part of this entire scene for me personally was when that idiot smashes the Dora watch. I couldn't believe it. That was a limited edition, and that wasn't his.
No.
Yeah, dude. So no, I gotta say, like, straight up, and this might sound weird coming from me, but like legit, the two goons that they kind of have like next to Tony, the one with the long hair especially, I was like, that's a really good actor, dude. Like, it's like all of his lines, I was like, this guy's like really funny. Like, it's like, and then like
he kept up really well with Robert Downey Jr.
Right, because Robert Downey Jr. is doing things where he's like 1, 2, 3, you know, and then the goon's just kind of like, hey man, is something supposed to happen? But it's like, but he's like delivering it really well. Like, that was actually like, I feel like all the attempts at humor in this movie, I noticed that they were trying to go in a direction where they were like, haha, we're making some parts a little bit more lighthearted, but none of it really hit with me until this.
Shocked.
But straight up this scene, I was like, this is actually like funny. Like, it was well written, it was well executed, well acted. I thought it was actually pretty funny.
Yeah, I agree. Usually I don't like the undercutting of like tense moments with humor, and Marvel does this a lot, but in this specific scene, I think it works really well, especially after we got the fact that like the Mandarin wasn't the Mandarin, and this isn't like the climax of the movie. This is like the build up to the climax of the movie. So it kind of worked as like a precursor, like lighthearted action scene before we get to the actual like climax, but then they do it again at the climax and I didn't like that one. But I agree. Yeah. This was done really well, I think.
Sure. Yeah. And then we also get in this part what might legitimately be my least favorite scene in the movie, right? So because Tony's trying to like call his suit towards him. It's already been established the suit is kind of pieced out. We got that in the intro as a little foreshadowing because now pieces of the suit are going to be flying at him. He gets the hand and uses it to break out of his shackles and he's fucking dudes up. Then he gets the foot and then that like and they stomps on a guy's toes and it's a whole thing. But then he's like, where are the rest of the pieces of my suit? And then we get a smash cut to Tennessee where there's a barn and the doors of the barn are shaking. And the kid from before is like, oh, Tony must be calling upon these pieces of his suit. I'm going to go ahead and open the barn door so that the suit can like get to him. And again, it's just like his suit can't like it's like what can his suit do versus what can't his suit, like it can like fly at like supersonic speeds halfway across the country to like attach to him, but then like a little rusted chain on an old barn door is enough that like the entirety of the rest of his suit is just stuck in limbo behind it. Like that's just an exposition scene. That's pure and simple. That is the only reason that was there, and it was kind of dumb. Like it didn't need to be there.
Yeah, see, these are the moments where it's really interesting doing this podcast because I watch a scene like that and I go, oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
And then I keep watching because I was like, oh, that was funny. Like seeing that, I get it. And it also lines up. I don't know. I thought that was funny. But you see it and you go, why the fuck did they put this scene in the movie? It wasn't needed. I hate that it existed. Like, our brains are just so different because... Right. I thought that was because it was a fun cut back to the kid.
High-minded, critical, very intelligent, well-spoken, charismatic, handsome. My mind as well as my physical form, both of those things.
Sure.
And and I just think that stands in stark contrast to just sort of who you are as a person. So and I agree, it is interesting and it does make a lot of sense to me.
My thing about the scene was like his expectations of how quick the things would get to him would be, because it seemed like as soon as he did the gesture, he was kind of like expecting the gloves to come to his hands, but it's like, dude, the gloves are in Tennessee and you're in Miami. Like, it's gonna take a little bit before they can get to you. So like, why is he expecting that it's just gonna happen as soon as he does the gesture?
Yeah, I didn't catch that at the first gesture, but I do definitely feel you on the whole time that it took to get from Tennessee for the rest of the pieces after they were left from the barn. Like that part I was like, oh, timing on that seems a little weird, but also didn't stick with me super long. I did like the pieces of the suit coming in kind of one at a time and him adjusting his fighting technique based on the pieces that he had in that moment. I thought that was really kind of a creative way to do it if you take out the trying to get out of the barn in Tennessee part of it. I really liked the fact that each piece was kind of coming in and changing his fighting style as he went through that. That was a fun scene. I also liked that the suit wasn't able to fly, and watching Iron Man walk downstairs was pretty funny. Seeing that. Even if, I don't know, the CGI was good or bad, that didn't really stick with me. I was more just laughing at the fact that it's hilarious to watch him walk downstairs like that.
I'm wondering how, like, I want to get my own Iron Man suit and try to walk downstairs because I don't feel like it would be that encumbering. But
any suit that you would get wouldn't be made out of what an Iron Man suit would be made out of. No, but that's besides the point.
I want to get my actual Iron Man suit made by Tony Stark and then try it and then be able to compare with that scene in Iron Man 3. That's all I'm saying. I think I could do it better.
Well, sure. Yeah, I think you should really show up Iron Man when you get a real Iron Man suit and then walk downstairs.
Yeah, when that happens, we'll do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, it's also revealed around this point that the vice president is actually evil. He's an evil guy because they've captured the real president, and then the Iron Patriot makes a phone call to the vice president and says, "Hey man, the Iron Patriot suit, that's not me. That's this other guy who stole it. So you're gonna need to go ahead and
warn the president.
Warn the president." To which the vice president says, "Oh, I will." And then he hangs up the phone and he goes, "Psych," and then goes back to like a Christmas dinner. And then I kind of thought it was funny because then it like zooms in on a girl in the house who I'm assuming is probably his daughter. It doesn't really say.
Sure.
And it turns out she's an amputee, which led him to be Eve. And it's kind of like, in this world, like, I mean, first of all, okay, I get that, like, you know, not having a part of your leg is like, you know, I'm sure that probably is an encumbrance, but like, I mean, there's like good prosthetics and stuff out there. And I mean, Tony Stark like made the Iron Man, like at a certain point, like, I'm just saying there are other avenues that aren't terrorism.
That aren't terrorism or high treason.
Right. Like, I don't buy that it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I have to assassinate the fucking president, you know? Like, it just, that was weird motivation to me. Like, I think it would have made more sense if it was like an ascension thing, and you could have just taken out the scene with like the amputee girl, and I would have been like, oh, he's just vying for power in this political, you know, house of cards. But then they intentionally show you that there's like a girl there missing a leg, and so it's like, oh, okay, so I guess we're meant to believe that this was his motivation. But again, it's like you're living in superhero world. Like, there's so many things you could do about that. Like, you know, and you're the vice president. Just hire Tony Stark to make something for, you know, it's like whatever. But no, like, she needs that limb regrown. The only way that that's going to happen is over the president's cold, festering corpse.
Sure. Yeah. Well, this is where they're going to take that Iron Patriot suit to go get the president from Air Force One. Air Force One is now compromised, and the president is put into the suit, as we find out, and is taken off to the Roxxon boat. But this is where we get the mid-air scene of all of the people from Air Force One falling, and Iron Man attempting to save all of them mid-air.
Okay, before that,
yes.
The way they introduced the dilemma of this third act is that they need to save the president, and they need to save Pepper, right? And the way they tell you this, the way they lay it out for you, is with a quick cut to an establishing shot of Tony and Rhodey in a speedboat. And the first line that anyone says in that scene is Rhodey being like, "We can only save the Pepper or the president. We can't save them both." To which I have to ask, why not? Who decided that those were the stakes? Like, you just said it and we now have to believe you? Like, that was never set up.
Yeah, it was never established.
Yeah, it was never established.
So I'll throw what my thoughts are there, is that if it would have been that way if Tony didn't have the remote control of the Iron Man suit. Because we end up finding out that when he goes to save the people on Air Force One, he didn't actually go. He controlled the Iron Man suit that then went to the plane to save those folks there. Right? So that's the way that I viewed it. If he didn't have that, then they need both of them in some way, shape, or form to help take these people down. And so Tony would have had to leave Rhodey to go to the Roxxon boat by himself, which probably wouldn't have ended up as well, considering they needed 42 suits worth of Iron Man's to solve that problem.
Right,
you know what I mean?
But also, like, to John's point, like, I get what you're saying, and I agree with you, actually, that, like, that is how it ended up laying out in the context. But I think also, to John's point, it is true, where Rhodey couldn't have possibly known that was the only option. Like, it's just sort of like, it's like that because he says it's like that, and now you, the audience, are like, oh, I guess it's just like that then. But there's no real discernible reason, like, why those were the only two things other than the fact that like Rhodey is just like, hey, just so you know, we got to pick one. And now the plot is just that they need to pick one. Even though, but it's only like that because Rhodey utters that line. Like there's no real in-universe reason beyond Rhodey saying that.
I think your logic works retroactively and not in the way that it in the sequence of events that it is presented in the story.
Well, that's why I need to be the next Kevin Feige. I've always said it, right? I've always said it. And people have called me the Kevin Feige of other things,
right? I've often called you the Kevin Feige of Cape shit.
Yeah, that's constantly. Many people have reached out to me saying the same thing as well, so that makes a lot of sense. Great. The armor gets hit by the truck, which is when we find out that Tony is not in there. And now this is the rocks, because he says it's time to trigger the house party protocol. And we don't necessarily know what it means yet, but this is where we see the people cleaning up Tony's house, and that the ground starts shaking and the hole in the ground opens up. And are you talking about the rocks that were shaking on that platform that opened up? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Go back and rewatch
I guess I just
it.
Didn't really...
It's weird. Also, the texturing on the rocks is kind of weird. They look a little like too shiny and slippery.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, the physics aren't really there. They kind of slip and slide everywhere. Anyway.
Yeah.
Small detail.
Well, sure. And now Rhodey and Tony make it to the boat. Neither of them have suits at this point in time. And as they start to realize how outnumbered they are, this is when the house party protocol shows up, which is all of the suits that Tony has been working on. Some of them working better than others, clearly, as we go through this scene. But I really like this. The design of the suits that we got to see were all really cool looking. We kind of saw in one of the suits, I think he called it Igor, was almost like the kind of genesis of the Hulkbuster a little bit. Like it was a kind of a larger, beefier suit that had like the thing on the back to lift the debris up that was falling down. We saw a lot of cool different designs. We saw kind of like a V-shaped, kind of reminded me of like if the White Ranger from Power Rangers that had that gold, you know what I'm talking about, that gold chest piece, almost like if that was an Iron Man suit. That's kind of like one that Tony was wearing. So I really liked the different designs we saw in all the suits that were helping out to take down Killian's crew.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that. I think that if you think Iron Man suits are cool, that was probably a fun scene. I like it. It didn't really do anything for me, but I'm also not going to make any attempt to rob you of the joy you felt in that. I accept that you thought that was cool, and and I'm happy for you.
I know what you think looks cool, so I understand that you don't think that this looks cool.
Yeah, Maya getting shot, I think that looks cool.
That captured in a superhero suit would really do it.
That would be cool. Yeah, if it's a superhero, but it like clouds your vision with a scene of Maya getting shot over and over again while he beats you to death, that'd be a fun superhero. That'd be my superhero power.
So lots of things happen throughout this fight, but one point that I thought was pretty cool was when Tony cuts Killian's arm off with that like knife that pops out of his Iron Man suit. Yeah. That was a pretty cool moment. We see Pepper stuck under some debris.
Yeah, well, but before Pepper's like stuck under the debris, I just want to point out that we also get like a classic Pepper bondage scene where it's like she's all sort of like tied up with her hands above her head and whatever, and it's just like weirdly sexual, which is just a thing that I've often noticed in these movies, that they like tying the women up in very sexual ways while a strong, imposing man gropes them.
Yeah.
And this movie had that too, where it's like, Pepper's just like, I'm helpless, and this guy's like, you fundamentally misunderstand the reason why you're here, and she's like, I'm your trophy, and I'm just like I
gotta say,
gross, dude.
That really did it for me. The only thing that could have done it for me better is if Pepper was also wearing an Iron Man suit. in that scene.
Yeah, and climbing on top of you.
On top of you.
Yeah, dude. No, like I said, man, I don't know, dude. And again, I get that it's like some people shit, like whatever, but it's just I can't help but notice that like oftentimes in these movies, it's like there's just like a scene where there's like a woman in peril and a guy is like touching her, and it's like has very sexual undertones. That's a reoccurring thing that Disney loves doing in their movies. And even before Disney. But, I got to imagine that, like, we'll probably even see it more now that it's Disney because, those nefarious Hollywood types, but maybe that's a different podcast. Anyway, back to you, Dan.
Wow. Great. Wonderful. This is really kind of going to be multiple shots of Killian and Tony running around the ship, fighting each other, Tony jumping into different suits as other ones get destroyed. I really like the use of the multiple suits and the way that Tony was kind of jumping in and out of them. And at the same time, obviously the president is in the Iron Patriot suit, so Rhodey's going to focus on getting him out of there so that he can get his suit back. I really liked in this moment where Mark 42, the current Iron Man suit, finally makes it back from the Air Force One to this Roxxon ship. And is about to come to Tony and hits the side of the ship and crashes behind him. Again, I thought that was really funny, but then how they ended up using that to put the suit on Killian and then have it blow up was a really cool scene altogether. From the start of Mark 42 coming in to it blowing up, I really enjoyed how they utilized the suits here. It didn't feel cheap. I guess is my opinion.
You know what did feel cheap?
Yeah. What's that?
Pepper's fake death.
Yeah, for sure, dude. That was like absolutely
the cheapest fake
death. But they didn't spend a bunch of time on it. It's not like they did it halfway through the movie and then she appears like another halfway through the movie. You know what I mean? Like
right, but also Pepper's like Tony's whole reason for like doing anything. I thought like the transition was sort of odd where he's like, jump, I'll catch you, and then he doesn't, and she's like, no, and like falls into the fire. Because again, I'm like, they really did a disservice to Pepper is just continually in peril and totally helpless and like can't do shit, and then they try to like save that with a redemption at the end, but whatever. But the point is, then he's just like, no, Pepper, shoot, and then the other dude shows up and he's like, I guess we'll fight on a bridge now. It's just kind of like, okay.
So they didn't spend a lot of time on it, but they spent enough time and gave Tony Robert Downey Jr. played that scene as if he just watched the love of his life die. And there was like a brief moment where it was a close up on his face where he was like actually trying to figure out what the fuck was happening. Like he just saw her die. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's gone and he's fighting Killian. Yes.
Exactly. That was exactly like kind of my issue with that is then Killian shows up with like he's like, oh, hey, that sucks, bro. I would have caught her. And Tony's like, hey, I guess let's fight, you know? And then it's just sort of like, it's like where I'm like, I think Tony would have killed himself, like truly. Like it's like Tony's like the whole thing with Tony in like the 3 movies is that he's like completely self-destructive and unhinged, and the only thing that like grounds him to earth even a little bit is Pepper. And he just watched Pepper die. So like I feel like some sort of manic chaos, like some unfurled rage, the likes of which you had never seen before, would be immediately following a Pepper Potts death. And instead it was just kind of like, business as usual with a little 1-2 combination punch scene on a bridge.
I would have liked to see him get like super fucking angry and like
totally
go insane on Killian, but he just seemed very calm and collected after that.
Totally, 100%. I agree with that.
Sure. And then she just gets up and she's like, "Oh, hey, I'm fine."
Right, and then she just gets, and then like my kind of thing is, I'm just like, she couldn't like do that before. I guess it's like, it's like she had to like fake die in order to trigger the healing factor in order to get the superpower. It's all just very convenient, like it's just like, okay. Like now her superpowers kick in, but only after she's like fallen to her death. Like it's like they weren't working before, but now they work. It's just like, okay.
And so that was my bad part about this scene. What I really liked about the scene, it's kind of ham-fisted, but the imagery of the U.S. president in the Iron Patriot suit tied to an oil rig about to be like crucified and set on fire, that's kind of dope.
That was kind of dope. I agree with you.
Sure. Pepper does end up saving the day, though. As Tony's on the ground, Pepper makes an appearance in her new fire form, which this has got to be some type of anime thing. Fire form, water form, I don't know what's happening. But she turns into this fire form and takes him down for Tony. No problem. She'll handle business. So she did get to kind of save the day there for him. No problem. That now they're even, I guess.
Yeah,
because they've been saving each other's lives.
Sure.
Yeah, her just in a shitty 2-dimensional symbolic way up until that point.
Sure. And then this is where he enacts the clean slate protocol, and he's been kind of preparing for this moment of like, this is getting a bit ridiculous. And then we see the fireworks show, which is his suits exploding in midair.
Yeah, which I like. Frankly, I didn't really get. Like, I understand that it's like he has the. It's like the whole point is that he has this like symbolic, like, okay, I'm going to leave the past behind, and now we're focused on the future. That's like the symbolism of the entire movie. Is that it's like his past mistakes coming back to haunt him. It's like the dude that he was mean to in Switzerland is coming back, to roost. Like the fact that he's like pushed all these people away from him, like that's coming back to roost. He's been neglecting his relationship with Pepper, that's coming back to roost. He hasn't like fully dealt with the trauma of what happened to him in New York, that's coming back to, it's like that's the theme. And I get that, like, so it's all like symbolic, and the ultimate symbolism is to blow up the suits. It's the final way of just leaving the past behind so that he can move forward. And I get it, but I don't get it. It's like why did he have to blow the suits up? Really, like outside of this like symbolism thing, like in the context of the actual story that they were telling. It felt like I'm like what like why exactly? What did he feel like? Why did Tony Stark in that moment feel it was necessary to just destroy all that stuff? I didn't really get it.
Yeah, it would have been cool if he used the clean slate to like deal the final blow.
Sure, yeah. Like all of them like go together. Yeah. Like the dude's so powerful, he's like regenerating, and all the suits like cluster on top of him and explode at once or something. Like then I'm like, okay.
From an action shot, that sounds cooler. But from a story perspective, it doesn't line up. Because then that whole clean slate protocol is action towards continuing down the same path that he has been, which is being a superhero defeating villains versus fixing a relationship and his own mentality and his own past and his own issues on his own. He's not doing it because there's a threat. He's doing it because he's trying to get out of this mindset and this stuff he's put himself into. These are distractions to him. So if he utilizes it just as a weapon again for the clean slate protocol, that defeats the purpose of him, us wrapping this story up for
that's
for
a
Tony.
really good point, Dan. I will defer to that one. That's
I'm actually I accept that works for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to continue that theme, Tony gets his shrapnel removed. And this is what we talked about. I know you'd mentioned it maybe in one at the end. You're just like, why doesn't he just remove the shrapnel? I think it's all building up. It's the course of these 3 Iron Man movies. And again, this is a trilogy. This is the last solo Iron Man movie. And it was really about looking at everything that he's done throughout these 3 movies and fixing those things and taking the time to work on himself instead of distracting himself constantly from these other threats and other things he's dealt with. So he gets the shrapnel removed. We see that Happy is okay. Harley gets a new lab from the mechanic. Well, not really even a lab necessarily, but he cleans up the garage, right? There's like a potato gun and some cool things in there, but it's not really a lab. And we end it with him in another kind of a backtrack vocal moment of him talking about his experience, and that in the end, nobody can take away that I am Iron Man.
Yep. And scene.
And scene.
And then, but before we get into ratings, right? I was actually like kind of satisfied with this ending, like for what it was. I mean, again, as I'm sure you can probably tell, like being as objective as possible. I'm like, this movie wasn't like I wasn't stoked on all the parts of it, but I felt like thematically they did some interesting things. At least I'm a sucker for like symbolism and like overarching like plots and metaphors that aren't like just purely surface level. And I think this is kind of the first Marvel movie that I saw that like had that in it. So I enjoyed that at the very least. And then they just go and fucking ruin it. Like they just leave a horrible taste in my mouth. At the
Is this the end credit scene?
The end credit scene where it's Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. And Tony Stark, in the theme of kind of trying to work on himself, is sort of telling Bruce Banner who's the Hulk, if you didn't know. He's telling him his woes, and Bruce Banner is falling asleep, and then Tony's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, are my problems boring you or whatever?" And he's like, "No, I'm a doctor, but I'm not that kind of doctor."
And then the favorite line. Here it is.
He's like, I could like, I could never be a therapist. And Tony's like, what, you don't have the credentials? And then Bruce Banner's like, no, I don't have the temperament. I was like, shut the fuck up. Shut up. Like, goddamn, dude. I thought I could have like,
in case,
one.
I don't know if you guys knew,
right?
But like, he's the Hulk.
Dude, I thought like, can I just have like one Marvel movie where I'm not like reminded that Bruce Banner is the fucking? It's the worst written character. Like I fucking oh my god. I know. I was like, it was like end credits come up. I was like, you know what? That was fun. And then I actually have to leave with a reminder, like the 60th reminder that Bruce Banner is the fucking Hulk. And also, by the way, we do get a jump out of the airplane scene in this movie too, sort of. So I think it thematically tracks. There
with
you
the
go.
Air Force One.
For the Air Force One. It's not the same, but I'm just saying we have two large tropes present in this.
It's one of those things again where you have ruined certain things in movies for me. And this is another one where it's like, I thought that this end scene was pretty funny, just personally, but when Bruce says he doesn't have the temperament, it's like I channeled Christian in that moment and was like, God damn it, come on.
Yeah, it's just like, fuck, dude. But but there you go. That's Iron Man 3.
Wow. You know, what I'm noticing is that as we're getting through more movies of the MCU and building up the themes of these stories, there's more to talk about.
Oh, yeah. No, these podcasts have started running long, which, hey, tell us.
You're welcome, world.
Yeah, you're welcome. Tell us with a 5-star review on our on our podcast page how you feel about these long podcasts.
Yes, please.
You guys want to get into the likes, the dislikes, and then the John final thoughts? Okay, so mine actually, I know that we've been running long, and I just said that, but I actually have kind of a long thing for the end here. So I'm sorry, but just strap in. So what I liked about Iron Man 3? There have been points throughout recording this podcast where I legitimately struggle to find like a thing that I like that I can sort of say like, that's like interesting beyond just like there being like a scene, right? Like I try and look at like themes or, overarching points or whatever to like this stuff. And I was kind of saying it before, but legit, I actually didn't have to think very hard at all about what I liked about this movie. And there's actually something I liked a lot about it, which is the fact that like Iron Man 1 is cut and dry, cliche, it kind of needs to be, right? Because it's like, it's Iron Man, he's fighting dudes in an Iron Man suit. Iron Man 2 was largely just sort of Iron Man 1. I mean, it had like more, themes of like the overreaching implications of what Iron Man means to the world or whatever. But I mean, it's still just sort of like Tony like fucking around in a suit, like whatever. I think a thing that I really liked about Iron Man 3 is how most of the movie is actually Tony like without his suit. Like it's kind of showing like, because they sort of like hint towards this a little bit in Iron Man 1, and it's a theme that I think that they really sort of finalize in Iron Man 3, which is the idea that like Tony Stark is Iron Man, but it doesn't matter if he's like in the suit or outside of the suit, like he is Iron Man, regardless of any of that. And I thought that it was cool how they sort of illustrated that, because they could have just had a movie where Iron Man, you have some cool suit up scenes, maybe introduce like a new suit that people hadn't seen before, more sort of back and forth, knockouts with villains or whatever. But as opposed to doing that, I think that they actually took a way riskier option in this one, which is basically just like Tony Stark as a character with the Iron Man suit kind of being ever present, but also very much existing in the background. Like, it wasn't really the point. Like, the point wasn't the Iron Man suit. The point was like Tony Stark as a dude, and the fact that it's like his mind is really the thing that gets him out of these situations. And the suit is kind of supplemental to his goals, but he's not completely helpless without it. Like, he's still a superhero character regardless as to whether or not he has access to his suit. Like, all he needs, and you can even sort of see that illustrated when he goes to take down the compound just based on things he buys at a Home Depot. It's like, if you just give him the opportunity to like be left to his own devices for a bit, he can work his way out of any of these situations. And even if the Iron Man suit never existed, he'd still be on some shit that would just be above what it was that other people were doing. And that's really what his superpower is. Like, his superpower is not the suit. His superpower is him just being Tony Stark, which is why I also think they kind of contrasted it. And again, this is shit that I like in like movies where, when he's like talking to the kid in the barn, he's referring to himself as like the engineer, what the fuck, the mechanic. Yeah, he's referring to himself as but he's not like, because like the kid's like, oh, is that Iron Man? He's like, that's Iron Man. I'm the mechanic. Like, there's this separation between the two. And then sort of at the end of the movie, like it's like the merging of those two things. Because at that point, he hasn't like overcome the obstacles without the suit yet. So he still sees himself as fundamentally like the suit is Iron Man, and he's just the guy who made the suit. But then at the end of the movie, him saying, I am Iron Man is like kind of a callback to the scene where Iron Man's sitting on the couch and he's separate from Iron Man, and he sees himself as a separate entity from Iron Man. And then by the end of the movie, he's overcome all of these things and realizes that regardless of whether or not he's in the suit, he is Iron Man. And I thought that was cool. So that was a fun theme. All that being said, I'm going to give this movie a 4.
A 4?
Well, it wasn't as good as the Avengers, so...
Yeah, see, I'm having a hard time with ratings because I'm also thinking about how good future movies are.
Yeah.
When I'm rating. So my ratings, by the way, I'm not lining it up with anything previous that I'm doing. I'm just telling you how I feel about this movie and a 7 out of 10 rating for this movie.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah, my shit too. I will say I liked like the explanation. I hope that the movies continue to go in this direction. This one just had like too much forgettable shit in it for me. Like, I think that like if you were to ask me specific details about this movie in 2 weeks, I probably would not be able to recall them for you. Like, too much of it kind of wasn't like super standout. It kind of like melded together. Well, but okay, so Dan, to the listeners, Dan's making a face, right? But again, I would hold that in contrast to something like the Avengers, where it's like I probably will, like I still remember specific details about that shit. And I think even like Captain America, there's a lot of specific details about that. This felt...
I mean, you'll remember Trevor taking a shit. So I mean, you'll never forget that.
Sure, yeah, probably. I'm just saying that like a lot of the action in this movie felt a bit generic to me. which kind of killed my buzz on it a little bit, but I really like that they are trying to head more in the direction of like actually having a fucking theme that they use like metaphors and symbolism and like actual things towards. Like, this is the first Marvel movie we've seen that I felt was really steeped in that, and steeped in it in a way where it's not like immediately obvious to the audience. Because I think a lot of times when these things have come up, they've sort of been this like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like, you know, hey, this is growth. Like, just they like really spell it out for you. And in this, I think it was a lot more subtle, which I enjoyed. 4 out of 10.
Jesus Christ.
What's your rating, Dan?
All right, what didn't I like? I am going to keep an eye out for this in the future because this was probably the worst case I've seen of it across the MCU. But technology stuff. Make up new tech. Make up new things. Build suits. Do all these new world science things that don't exist today. But when you refer to technology across this movie or do things from a technology perspective that don't make any sense, when, like, for example, the thing in the van with the ISDNs, it would have taken someone 4 seconds to Google a term that they could have used that would have been better. So it's one of those things where someone writes this line and it gets past hundreds of people who have to approve, edit, review, watch it. They send it through tests. They do all this shit. And somehow, through all those hundreds of people who developed this movie, no one said, hey, why are you using the term ISDNs? Or, hey, why is Iron Man and Iron Patriot holding their hand to their head? Or, hey, why is the speaker from the phone blasting out so that everybody can hear the personal conversation that they're having on the phone? All of these technology things in those moments, just, I very much dislike them. Again, make up new technology, show us futuristic tech, throw 3 balls on the table that can show a holographic image of your brain that you can step into to show where the empty slots are. All that shit, whatever. But taking real world terminology and technology and making it stupid, I'm not a big fan of. Overall, I'd put this movie in my head at a 7.2. Which is, again, I'm 0.2. Yeah, it's 7.2. I really liked that this first movie of Phase 2, from not only, to your point, Christian, theming perspective, but also from a comedy perspective. We're going to see this constantly as we go through the next 2 phases. This movie sets the pace for where Marvel's moving forward, and I think that makes sense with it lining up with Disney taking over. It lines up with new directors being brought in and new franchises and new heroes and everything. And I think that this is where they realized that this is where people were connecting the most with these movies, was when they did this kind of work. So 7.2, really excited to see more movies that I haven't seen in a long time coming up here.
Yeah.
And John.
So this is actually one of the only podcasts that we've done where I have actually changed my ratings, my thoughts on this movie from when I first watched it last night, I guess. Last night, right after watching it, I was ready to give it like a 5. Just a solid 5. I thought there were like equal parts good and bad to the movie, and it's interesting listening to Christian talk about what he liked about the movie, because a lot of that sold me more on the movie than I originally thought I would. And I hope that anyone listening has like the same sort of kind of engagement with the movies listening to this podcast going forward. But I think my rating for this would be a 5.75 instead of the 5.
Okay.
There were a lot of parts that I did like, a lot of cool imagery. And you're right, it is like one of the first movies where they're actually bringing in like character arcs and like very character focused and character driven storytelling. That being said, this movie still ends up feeling really generic. The movie suffers from a lot of pacing issues. Like by the time Act 2 started, I thought we were supposed to be in Act 3 already, but like they had cut like the pacing too many times. And I thought that like, oh, the villain should already be established at this 40-minute mark. But the Mandarin was a really cool twist. I think that the Mandarin gives this like a full point up on his own. And yeah, I mean, just good and bad all around. Overall, ends up being generic. I think I won't remember most of this movie in the next week or two. But I am very excited to see the trending upwards of the MCU movies as we go on.
Well,
I mean, okay, so next week is going to be a little bit different because it definitely won't be an upward trend. But after that, yeah, I'm excited to actually start liking the movies that we watch. I hope you guys all do too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
See ya.